Ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and it's no real shock to anyone when I say that I have a fairly firm dislike for Ubisoft when it comes to games development. I have a tendency to see Ubisoft games as closely tied to a very set series of formulas that they expect to see them through over the years, sacrificing innovation for extreme iteration, resulting in video games that are typically never really all that bad, but never having the capability of becoming outstanding either. They have, in the past, been an exceptionally middle-of-the-road company. However, over the past year, that extreme adherence to formulaic game design seems to be continuing to bite them in their proverbial backsides, giving rise to the monumental failure that is Skull and Bones, a game that started its life as a successor to Black Flag. There is the controversial actions taken with Assassin's Creed Shadows and the backlash resulting from that. And finally, we have the bland and buggy Star Wars Outlaws, which as a game only further reinforces the statements I've made regarding Jedi Survivor and Jedi Outcast. Editing Sid here. It looks like I just made a little bit of a mistake where I said Star Wars Jedi Outcast when I should have said Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Please do not confuse those two. Outcast is actually a fantastic game that you should definitely go play. Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order and Jedi Survivor are extreme mediocrity. And back to the video, where Star Wars fans have been fed feces for so long that even mediocrity tastes like ambrosia to them. And as a result, the continued actions by Ubisoft with Yves Guillemot, backed by Tencent, has begun to attract the ire of the Ubisoft investors. And this came within a letter written to the Ubisoft board of directors as well as Yves Guillemot, Tencent, and the other larger shareholders of Ubisoft by Juraj Krupa, the founder of AJ Investments. And the letter discusses where Krupa feels the Ubisoft stock valuation should be, which is 40 to 45 euro per share. Rather unrealistic goal, I believe, but that's neither here nor there, along with his concerns about the future of Ubisoft under its current management and his proposals to improve Ubisoft as a whole. Within those concerns, Krupa makes a very few concerning allegations. One of such is where he states, "The main reason why the valuation is so low compared to its peers is that Ubisoft, at its current state, is mismanaged and shareholders are hostages of the Guillemot family members and Tencent, who take advantage of them. Management is focused on pleasing investors with beating quarterly results and not focusing on long-term strategy to provide an exceptional experience for gamers." He continues expressing concerns that the Guillemot family and Tencent have blocked any potential acquisitions of Ubisoft. As stated, Ubisoft holds existing agreements that prevents any single entity from gaining control of Ubisoft without the consent of Tencent and Guillemot. Krupa also alleges, albeit indirectly, that Tencent and Guillemot, through Guillemot's company Guillemot Brothers Limited, getting really tired of saying Guillemot here, but oh well, that they are engaged in stock dealings that shore up their voting rights controls of Ubisoft. And to do that, he is also alleging that they are deliberately undervaluing Ubisoft in order to force a discounted value of the stock prices in order to eventually gain full control of the company. Quote, "We believe that Guillemot family and Tencent are discounting potential value of Ubisoft in order to buy more shares at lower valuation and eventually take full control of the company at a heavily discounted valuation." Which, if true, if this were a United States-based corporation anyways, this would be extremely illegal for them to do. Whether or not this is also illegal in France, where Ubisoft is headquartered, I honestly couldn't tell you. But either way, it is an extremely damning accusation to make. Krupa continues on to discuss how Ubisoft may be expending far more money than it needs to, and in true investor fashion, the first thing he targets is the number of people being employed. The thing is, in this instance, it may be a partially fair point to target. He states, accurately, the following comparisons, and for these comparisons I'll be going from smallest number of employees to the largest, that Take-Two Interactive, which employs 7,500 people, had a reported revenue of $5.35 billion with a net profit of $930 million. Activision Blizzard, which employs 9,500 people and before its acquisition by Microsoft reported revenues of $8.8 billion with a net profit of $2.2 billion. Way to go, Activision Blizzard. Way to sell those microtransactions. Electronic Arts employs 11,000 people, has a reported revenue of $7.43 billion with a net profit of $1.58 billion. And then there's Ubisoft. Well, Ubisoft employs 17,000 people, which is the equivalent to both Take-Two Interactive and Activision Blizzard combined. However, Ubisoft's reported revenues were only $2.4 billion with a net loss of $60 million. Which, when you combine Take-Two and Activision's numbers to match the 17,000 people employed by Ubisoft, and you're seeing the same number of people being employed generate roughly 5.9 times, rounded of course, the amount of revenue being generated as Ubisoft. And, well, quite frankly, most any investor in any corporation is going to look at those differences and think that there's going to be a lot of fat that needs to be trimmed here. Now, of course, there are any number of 100 different factors surrounding the differences in revenues between the companies. You can't make a strict apples-to-apples comparison like that. It's as unrealistic as it is ultimately unwise to do. But investors being investors, that's still going to be an extremely compelling argument for them to take into consideration. And the measures being proposed is, big surprise, laying off a bunch of people and selling studios. Trim the fat, stop developing new IPs, and focus on making quality games for the more beloved IPs in the Ubisoft portfolio. In addition, replace Yves Guillemot as CEO along with a lot of the decision makers at Ubisoft. Not to mention, also, sell Ubisoft to a private equity firm so it is no longer a publicly traded corporation and all of the investors get bought out at what they deem to be a fair price. Which that last part is going to be of great interest to at least some of the investors, as while looking at the one-year market summary for Ubisoft, and you see a rather bleak picture, with Ubisoft stock having lost nearly 52% of its value since this time last year. As well as seeing the 5-year history and the price at its $13 peak back in 2021, it loses over 82% of its value. And this selling to a private equity firm to get what everyone deems to be a fair price, I feel may be the primary driving focus for what this investor is doing here. He's seen Ubisoft continue to take a bath time and time again, and he doesn't want to lose money. So he has to try and figure out some way to be able to recoup his money, maybe even profit a little bit, and he sees the only way of doing that, probably, is to just have Ubisoft be sold to a private institution. I don't think he's being entirely objective here, but then again, we're not expecting objectivity from an investor. An investor doesn't give a damn about objectivity. All they care about is not losing money. And right now, Ubisoft is losing them a lot of money. Now, any way you cut it, Ubisoft is not having the best of times right now. And to be honest, I can at least agree with Juraj Krupa on one thing. Yves Guillemot, as well as most of the rest of Ubisoft's leadership, should probably be replaced. Their games are either extremely mediocre or outright terrible in the case of Skull and Bones. Their processes obviously need to be looked at with a very critical eye. Ubisoft has a terrible reputation, even when compared to other game corporations, and much of that reputational damage is due strictly to the leadership of the company. So in that regard, as Grand Moff Tarkin wisely once said,
"Continue with the operation. You may fire when ready."
But then again, what do I know? I'm just a mook with a mic. Once again, ladies and gentlemen, I am SidAlpha, and I'll see you next time.